Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. Okay, so this is the week before Saturn, through its retrograde, returns to Pisces. And also next week, we have the first eclipse of September, a lunar eclipse, full moon. So this week is, I would say, a bit of anticipation, a bit of going back, rethinking. Keep in mind that as Saturn dips back into Pisces, some people are going to be back in their comfort zone of shoring up, going within. What we've seen as Saturn has moved into Aries is a will to construct new terrain. And the result so far is we see a lot of hubris and positioning and people feeling very strong and confident about how they want to declare and make the new world. At the same time, we're seeing people who are not comfortable with especially one strong man or person in charge, because Aries, leader, person in charge, citing the way. And even though there's a lot to be said for leadership, direction, and striding into new territory, the discomfort that many people have, especially now that Pluto is in Aquarius, which is more about collective collaboration and vision. I think we'll see as Saturn dips back into Pisces, a perhaps buyer's remorse or a sense of where are we going with all of this. So it will be interesting as we reconsider where things seem to be going. So the week of the 25th, the moon enters Libra at 10:08 a.m., times I give her Eastern time. And that doesn't mean you can't take this into account. If you're not Eastern time zone, you just have to do a little calculation, which with world clocks on our phones and computers make it relatively simple. So the morning begins with what we call a void of course moon. And that means when the moon's void of course, that usually it's not good to initiate something, better to work on things already in motion and clean up, get ready for the next thrust. Once the moon enters Libra, it's a very comfortable energy for moving ahead with what needs to be mitigated, litigated, talked about, diplomatic efforts. This all becomes somewhat easier and more fluid for people, especially after late morning. And that's because there may be some posturing or positioning or needing to put things in a certain frame before all the information is going to be received by the other party that negotiation may be happening with. The early afternoon, midday can bring some confusion. Oh, I thought we were going in this direction. Can you clarify that? It's not necessarily bad. It's just important to flesh it out, make sure all parties understand where we're being directed to. We're in the waxing moon cycle. So that means that this week is good for putting things in motion, building towards momentum, achieving certain goals or directions you want to go in. And when the moon is in Libra, as it is Monday and Tuesday, this bodes well overall for things that have to do with conversation, coming to agreement, compromise, ebb and flow, tug and pull, like trying to get to the point of equilibrium, ideally, with what is beneficial for all parties. The evening looks like a really nice evening for connecting, for sharing ideas. There's a bit of fire energy. Venus has moved into the sign of Leo. So that tends to generate creative ideas, romantic ideas, a desire to connect. So it's overall, I think, a very strong, positive day. And that spills into Tuesday, the 26th, which actually has a lot of power and punch to it as well. What's happening here is that Venus in Leo is dancing with Pluto in Aquarius, which can bring in new people, situations that can feel very magnetic or, on one hand, obsessive, almost like difficult to not think about, passionate exchanges. This can be fleeting or it can have an impact depending on your personal sign and how affected you are by this particular energy. And overall, I would say this is a highly creative day. It's a great day for partying, sharing ideas, romantic exchanges, playfulness. There's a lot of generosity of thought that can happen, which I think is just delicious. The big problem about this particular day may be a lot of things that look enticing and interesting and making a decision where to put your thoughts, energy, and momentum. The really high energy juice of benefits and things just sort of crystallizing and coming together and really having the highlights perhaps of the day are in the evening time. This just looks very like the heat is up and it's a nice simmer for just cooking ideas and having that connective exchange that can be so delicious when people are on and vital and connecting and jazzed. The moon goes void, of course, at 10:06 p.m., after which time, with that moon in Libra, it's really nice to kind of wind down, certainly get off electronics if you haven't done that already, and just ease into a regenerative evening. The moon enters the sign of Scorpio the next day, but not until 9:27 p.m. So that means the whole day, essentially, into early evening, certainly Eastern time zone, is going to be a void of course day. As I said earlier, void of course energy is not so much about, let's start something new. Let's reach out and connect to that client I've been trying to get in touch with and introduce myself to. When the moon is void, of course, people can, especially in the sign of Libra, I mean, people can seem very open, wanting to talk, or you can feel like nothing is quite hitting. You know, when you've got the magnets and they're the same polarities and they just don't come together, that's kind of where we're at on this day. That you can sail by thoughts or ideas, or a classic example is going to a store or venue because you wanted to see something, you finally made time to do it, and it's closed. That is a classic void of course thing that can occur. Just that sense of things are not coming together in the way I would like them to. On the other hand, you can have a luncheon, you can be networking, feel like, wow, you know, there's so much good conversations and a lot is going on here. And yet nothing is coming together. You may think it is, but then people never follow up. Nothing ever gets off the ground. And so it's better to save that energy for a more vital connective time. Once the moon enters Scorpio at 9:27 p.m., then we're in, well, it's very different energetically than that Libra moon, air sign, wanting to convey ideas. With Scorpio, it's not that we don't want to convey ideas, but there is it's almost like a vetting that happens. I will share these thoughts and ideas with you if I trust you, or if this is really going to get me the research, the answers that I require. So there's a digging, a delving, a research, a possibly self-reflection, depending on the individual. It can be highly therapeutic. So this is, again, as I said, the evening of Wednesday. Looks a little bumpy to me, honestly, in that there's a lot of thoughts or things that can come up. So if you have a lot of water in your horoscope, specifically Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio, possibly your signs as well, you may feel highly sensitive at this period of time. And you may prefer to simply kind of close out a lot of stretching yourself too thin, put yourself in an environment that feels secure and quiet where you can really reflect or do that kind of therapeutic self-care, or be with the people who you do feel that strong connectivity to. Into the next day, this moon in Scorpio is continuing to want to ferret out, find, discover. So if you're on some sort of project or journey of self-discovery, perhaps, or delving into better forms of communication with a partner, coworker, it can be a very therapeutic day. It can reveal certain things. It doesn't mean it's easy, though. And yet, I think that if those are things that are on your list of, I've got to move through this and crack this code or this nut or this impasse, it can be a really productive day to be moving with this, as can Friday, August 29th. These days also can work really well with problem solving, figuring out how to break into a puzzle that has been eluding. You may not end up with the absolute answer, but it can cover a lot of ground and disclose certain information that gets you closer to whatever that goal or idea is that you want to find out, make happen, and realize. These days can also be really tremendous for if you're working through some sort of medical or health situation, even psychological, as I said earlier, therapeutic. You can cover a lot of ground and uncover a lot of information that perhaps is going to lead you eventually to where you want to go. One thing anyone knows who's ever been through a journey of perhaps self-discovery or working through certain health challenges or challenges with relations, trying to crack open that, as I said earlier, that code. It's not necessarily a fast project. It takes time. We have to go through some dead ends or clear out some old information before we find our ways to what the truth is or the key that leads us to where we want to go. So these are strong days for working through things that you might be trying to solve. And even though you won't necessarily achieve resolution by Friday evening, the 29th, you can cover a lot of ground and get to a place where you see the way clearer for what's coming next. So the moon goes void, of course, at 8:47 p.m. on August 29th. And then it enters Sagittarius at 10:04 a.m. on Saturday the 30th. So you can hear the late evening of Friday has that void, of course, moon in the sign of Scorpio. And I would see that as being an absolutely wonderful time to kind of limit your to-dos and just really allow yourself some meditative, quiet time. Read a mystery if you like to do that. Take a bath if you like to do that. Just kind of cuddle and spend time with someone you trust or your favorite four-legged friend. Do things that just allow you a sense of safety and recharging, because there is that quiet need to feel a sense of security in what can feel for many of us like a rather chaotic world at this point in time. So Saturday the 30th, once the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, this is our high energy weekend. And the piece about this high energy weekend that I think is important to keep in mind is, as I said at the beginning, Saturn will retrograde into Pisces, actually Monday. So what we're doing as we're in this kind of envelope of fire weekend, Sagittarius being mutable fire, is we may really feel this sort of seeking, like I want to launch, seek, achieve, find. And that can be very, very high on the agenda for many of us. Depending on where you are on the planet, I mean, especially Northern Hemisphere people, that's late August, that's the tail end of summer. And it can be a wonderful time to just spend the weekend in the out of doors. Do something that allows you to release energy and connect to nature. One thing to be aware of is that midday on Saturday, you can encounter a surprise, something that's unexpected, that wasn't anticipated. So if you're traveling on a road, that could be a detour. Keep in mind a certain ability of adaptability so that you don't let yourself get thrown if the plans alter. This is a Uranus transit and it's involving the moon, so it's relatively quick. However, the results can be you've got to make a detour, go in a different direction. I'm just giving an example. It could work many different ways how this transpires. It can be the plans for a party where a person ordered certain color balloons and then the balloons come and they're a whole different color than was anticipated. I guess for people who do gender reveal parties, this can be a bit of a jolt. However, it's all about whatever the humor is or how one works a situation. Your response is somewhat in your control as long as you don't fall into the trap of reactivity. So with the Uranus kind of engaging with the moon roughly midday, some of us may encounter something that feels like an upset, a surprise, a derailment. How directly this affects you may have a lot to do with your personal horoscope. Certainly, one thing that I've been noticing and anticipated was people who have a lot of air or fire in their horoscopes. Now that Pluto is in early degree Aquarius, air sign, Uranus is in early degree Gemini, air sign. Saturn is in early degree Aries, even though it will dip back into Pisces, as I said, in a very short period of time. But it's basically starting its arc through Aries. Neptune is at early degrees Aries. So we have this intensity of fire and air with the outer planet activity. And the outer planets are what we call generational. They're in orbit from Earth's perspective for years and years. So they are not fast moving in what their effect is here on Earth. As they've initiated an air and fire sign, people who have a lot of air or fire in their chart, regardless of if it's early degree, if you were born with the sun at early degree as opposed to late degree of an air or fire sign, people have a sensitivity to the shift. How concretely they're feeling it has things to do with other aspects of their horoscope, but oftentimes the person will sense an awareness that things are changing. And so with this kind of surprise energy that happens when the moon is in a sign that is directly encountering, in this case, Uranus, and later makes the picture with Pluto and earlier has made a picture with Neptune, we're getting this kind of download, I guess is the best word for it. It's an emotional conduit, if you will, that is for people who are sensitive to it, alerting us that change is afoot. And Uranus is something that can come in, create a change, a distraction, a surprise, something unexpected, but not necessarily have long-term effect. And it depends on how it hits the individual or the situation, if that's going to be disruptive with a long-term effect. In Pluto's case, the transformation is indisputable. It is something that is not avoidable. We can pretend it's not happening. We can do our best to shirk the transformation that is coming in with great impact. But sooner or later, our lives are going to be affected by whatever that irrevocable transformation symbolizes. For each of us personally, depending where Pluto is moving through your horoscope, what area of life has, in this case, Aquarius in it, but also on the world frame, how we will see over time how societies are reacting or dealing with the impact of Pluto and Aquarius. We're just coming off Pluto and Capricorn, which is very much about institutional transformation, financial, education, medical, all these things basically demanding some kind of restructuring. And so we see the status quo hanging on to it for dear life and doing its best to enforce absolute structure against the changes. But regardless, there's going to be a momentum and change. It's just, it can't not occur. And this weekend, it's best to think in terms of what is being presented to me that wants some sort of structural change, and how am I, what is my first reaction to it? And is there a way I can modify my response, or also think in terms of how is this transformation going to, in the end, be something that I can utilize in a way that helps me evolve as a human being, as a spiritual human being. And that, I think that's kind of the bottom line of what Plutonic transformations, evolutions can be, because we dread having to give something up, have life not be as we knew it. We do everything in our power to prevent that from happening. And yet, when these irrevocable shifts occur, the ideal is to make something new out of it that is more conscious than what we had been living before. Question is humanity going to be able to do that? But our individual question always is, how can I be as conscious and aware and make the most of what I've got to help the rest of the people I love, care about, and the people I don't even know evolve and be better. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.